The stars stretched across the void like scattered diamonds, cold and distant, yet full of silent promise. Commander Elias Kane stood at the observation deck of the flagship Aurora, watching the human armada gather below. Hundreds of ships, fighters, cruisers, and carriers lined up in precise formation, their engines glowing softly against the black canvas of space. This was the day humanity would face the alien coalition that had been hunting them for decades. Elias's jaw tightened as he watched the ships move. He had fought many battles, but none like this. This time, failure was not just death. It was the end of human presence in the sector. He could feel the weight of command pressing on his shoulders, heavy and unyielding. And yet, amid all the pressure, one presence made his chest tighten more than any fleet ever could. Mira Solon approached quietly, her footsteps soft against the metallic floor. She was the strategist of the fleet, a genius who had saved human colonies from disasters they didn't even know were coming. But right now she was not planning or calculating. She was standing beside him, her eyes fixed on the stars. "Commander," she said softly, not breaking her gaze, "the fleet is ready. The pilots are waiting for your signal." Elias nodded, but he didn't look at her. "I know," he said. "I can see it. But knowing and seeing are different. Do you ever feel small looking at all this?" Mira smiled faintly, a mix of sadness and warmth. "Small, yes, but not powerless. We may be small, but humanity is. Stubborn, clever, dangerous when we have to be." He turned to her, meeting her eyes for the first time in what felt like hours. "You make it sound easy. It's never easy," she admitted. "But someone has to make it possible." There was a silence then, heavy and charged, filled with things neither of them dared to say. Elias felt the tension in his chest grow. He knew that the moment he would have to give the order to jump into battle was approaching, and yet all he wanted was to hold on to her. Without thinking, he stepped closer. Mira did not step back. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, the noise of the fleet, the alarms, the distant hum of the engines, all of it disappeared. Elias could see every line of her face, every thought she tried to hide, every fear she had tried to mask with her calm exterior. Then she did something neither of them expected. Mira reached up, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. She leaned close, and her lips pressed against his. It was a kiss that burned like fire and froze like ice at the same time, fierce, urgent, and impossible to forget. When they pulled back, Elias gasped, trying to catch his breath. Mira's eyes were dark with emotion, almost pleading, and she leaned in close enough for him to hear her whisper, "Forgive me for what I must do after." The words were cold, cutting through him more than any blade could. She did not explain, did not offer comfort, only left him with a secret that would haunt him for the coming battle. What do you mean?" he asked, though a part of him feared the answer. Mira gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "I cannot say, not now. Not ever." And with that she turned and walked away, her figure swallowed by the shadows of the command center. Elias felt an emptiness where her warmth had been. His hand remained suspended in the air where he had reached for her, trembling slightly. The communication system beeped, snapping him back to reality. Lieutenant Roran's voice came through, steady and professional, though Elias could hear the tension underneath. "Commander Kane, all units are in position, standing by for your orders." Elias closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Mira's words echoed in his mind, making his chest ache. "Forgive me for what I must do after. What could be worse than death? What could be worse than losing a battle? What secret could she be hiding that was worth such a warning?" He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. "Signal the jump coordinates," he said, his voice firm. "We move on my command," Roran acknowledged, and the fleet began the sequence that would carry them to the alien stronghold. Lights blinked, engines hummed, and the anticipation of war filled the air. Elias walked toward the bridge, his mind a storm of strategy, fear, and concern for Mira. As he entered the command room, officers snapped to attention, eyes bright with determination. Humans were here, ready to fight, and they looked to him for guidance. He took a deep breath, masking the turmoil in his heart. "Report," he said, his voice steady. "Fleet is ready, sir," Roran replied. "Alien positions detected. Sensors indicate heavy defenses, but their formation is predictable. Our scouts confirm weak points along the left flank." Elias studied the holographic map projected in the center of the room. Alien cruisers glimmered in eerie green light, their weapons visible even from a distance. He traced the path the fleet would take, calculating odds in his mind. Good, he said finally. We hit the flank, draw them out, then push the core. Fighters take the outer edges. Protect the carriers at all costs. Any questions? A murmur of acknowledgement passed through the room. None dared question him, not now. He could feel Mira's absence like a phantom pain, and yet he forced himself to focus on the task ahead. Later, when the fleet was minutes from entering the jump corridor, Elias found himself alone again, standing by the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly, and he allowed himself a moment of thought. He remembered the first time he had met Mira. She had been a young analyst, brilliant beyond belief, but quiet, almost timid. He had seen her potential immediately, but what had surprised him most was her courage. Even then, she had been willing to make impossible choices for humanity's survival. And now, here she was, standing at the edge of the most critical moment in human history, hiding something even from him. He trusted her intelligence, her judgment, but could he trust her secrecy? Could he forgive what she might do? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden vibration through the deck. The jump corridor was stabilizing, and the fleet's engines roared in preparation. Elias felt the familiar tingle of fear mixed with exhilaration. He took one last deep breath and touched the insignia of his command badge, a small reminder of home, of humanity, of why he was willing to risk everything. Then, the stars stretched and blurred, and the fleet was gone. They had jumped into the unknown, leaving behind familiar systems, leaving behind safety, and stepping fully into war. For the first few moments after the jump, the fleet traveled in silence. The void was quiet, almost peaceful, and Elias allowed himself a brief moment to think of Mira. He imagined her at her console, focused, calculating, doing something he could not yet understand. Her secret, her warning, gnawed at him like an invisible blade. Finally, Roran's voice cut through the quiet. Commander Kane, alien fleet detected. Battle imminent. Elias nodded, his jaw tight. All units prepare for engagement. Remember your training. Remember why we fight. Humanity survives today because we refuse to yield. The fleet responded in unison, engines flaring, weapons priming. The calm of space shattered as human ships spread into formation, ready to face the alien armada. Elias felt a spark of pride and sorrow at the same time. He thought of the billions counting on them, of the families watching from colonies far away, and most of all of Mira. Her kiss, her whisper, her warning, they burned in him, sharper than any weapon in the fleet. The first shots of the battle would come soon. And in that moment, Elias realized that whatever Mira had done, whatever she might do, humanity's survival rested on their courage, their ingenuity, and their stubborn refusal to accept defeat. He straightened his shoulders, gripping the console in front of him. We fight, he said softly, almost to himself. No matter what comes next, we fight. And somewhere deep in the command center, he hoped Mira was doing the same. The stars around the fleet seemed to explode into motion as the human ship surged forward, engines blazing. Commander Elias Kane gripped the command console tightly, his knuckles white as the alien armada emerged from the void. They were immense, sleek and deadly, ships that glowed with green energy and moved with an almost predatory grace. Alien fleet is larger than expected. Sir, reported Lieutenant Roran, his voice steady despite the tension. Sensors indicate heavy weaponry on the lead cruisers. Shields are strong, but there are weak points near their engines. Elias studied the holographic display, plotting the attack. Fighters on the left flank draw their fire and create openings for the cruisers. Remember, precision over brute force. We are human, but we are not invincible. The order was given, and the fleet moved like a living organism. Hundreds of ships in perfect synchronization, every pilot relying on skill, instinct, and training. Elias's eyes flicked to the observation deck window. Somewhere in the command center, Mira Solon was working, her hands moving over holographic panels with calm efficiency. He could not see her face, but he knew her mind was already steps ahead of the enemy, calculating and adjusting, making moves that could save lives, or cost them. Suddenly, the alien fleet fired first. Beams of green energy lanced across the void, striking human fighters with terrifying accuracy. One vessel exploded in a brilliant flash, sending fragments spinning through the cold darkness. Shields holding, Elias called out. though his voice carried the edge of tension he could not fully hide. Divert power to forward shields and prepare counterstrike. Human ships darted and spun, dodging beams with agile maneuvers that aliens seemed unprepared for. Elias felt a surge of pride. Despite their smaller numbers, humanity's creativity, bravery, and adaptability had always been their greatest weapons. The fighters on the left flank executed daring passes, weaving through alien fire, drawing attention, and creating just enough distraction for the cruisers to advance. Elias's heart pounded as he watched. Every move, every decision could mean life or death for the hundreds of pilots under his command. Amid the chaos, Mira's influence became apparent. A new energy wave pulsed from the Aurora, invisible to the alien sensors. It disrupted enemy targeting systems, giving human ships the edge. Elias realized that she had activated a secret subsystem, something she had been developing in the shadows. "Commander Kane," Roran said, his voice tight with astonishment. "Whatever Mira did, it's working. Alien targeting is off by almost 20%. We can take the lead cruisers if we push now." Elias nodded, his mind racing. "All units press the attack. Focus on the exposed points. Protect the carriers. Every ship counts." The fleet surged forward like a living river of steel and light. Human ships dodged, fired, and coordinated with precision that no alien algorithm could predict. The first wave of cruisers struck alien ships, exploiting weak points in their formation. Explosions lit the darkness as energy shields flared and collapsed under sustained fire. Elias's eyes never left the battlefield, but his mind kept drifting back to Mira. Her whisper haunted him. "Forgive me for what I must do after." What was she planning? Was her secret only for the fleet's survival or something more? He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. The battle was not a time for speculation. Lives hung in the balance, and every decision mattered. The aliens responded with overwhelming force, sending swarms of agile fighters toward the human flank. Elias barked orders, coordinating defenses and counterattacks. Human pilots dodged and fired with skill born of years of relentless training. They were outnumbered, outgunned in some areas, yet their ingenuity kept them alive. One fighter unit, piloted by Ensign Liratan, executed a daring maneuver that caused an alien cruiser to overextend its shields. Elias seized the opportunity. "Crusaders, fire on the exposed section!" Energy beams struck the alien ship, shattering armor and disabling key systems. A cheer erupted over the fleet's comms, but Elias's joy was tempered by the losses piling up around him. Human ingenuity could win battles, but it could not eliminate risk. Through it all, Mira worked silently, her hands moving over controls that even Elias did not fully understand. Every now and then she would glance at a monitor, adjusting the waves of energy she had unleashed, subtly guiding the flow of battle. Elias realized something crucial. She had not just protected the fleet, she had given humanity a weapon the aliens could not counter. Her brilliance was the key to their survival today, and yet he could not shake the feeling that her whisper, her warning, meant there was a cost. As the battle raged, a massive alien dreadnought emerged from the shadows, its hull glowing with green energy. It moved with a terrifying confidence, crushing smaller ships as it advanced. Human pilots scrambled, but the dreadnought's weapons were precise and devastating. Elias clenched his fists. "All firepower on the dreadnought! Focus on engines and weapons arrays." The fleet concentrated its attacks, beams striking, missiles launching, fighters weaving through the destruction. The dreadnought's shields faltered under the combined assault, and finally, with a blinding flash, it exploded into fragments that drifted through the void. For a moment, there was silence. Then cheers erupted across the human fleet. They had survived the first wave, taken down a massive threat, and proven that human courage and strategy could outmatch even superior technology. Elias allowed himself a small smile, but it was fleeting. The battle was far from over. There were more ships, more dangers, and the alien commanders were adaptive and relentless. He felt a familiar tension building, a knot in his chest. "Commander," Roran reported, "casualties are high, but morale is holding. Mira's system continues to disrupt the enemy fleet. They're retreating slightly, but it may be a ruse." Elias studied the display. The alien fleet's movements were unpredictable, yet he could see patterns. "We hold formation. Keep the outer perimeter tight. Prepare for sudden maneuvers, Roran. Keep me updated on every shift. No surprises." He paused, taking a deep breath, thinking of Mira. Her system was brilliant, but how had she developed it in secret? And what had she meant by "forgive me for what I must do after"? He wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but now was not the time. The battle needed every ounce of focus he could give. Minutes stretched into hours. Human ships danced through the void, dodging beams, returning fire, and executing impossible maneuvers. Each successful strike was a testament to human courage and ingenuity. Each loss was a painful reminder of the cost of survival. Then, a sudden alert flashed across the command display. A massive alien cruiser had broken formation and was moving directly toward the human carriers. Elias's heart sank. If it reached them, the fleet could be crippled. "Divert all fighter units to intercept," he commanded. "Protect the carriers at all costs." Fighters veered into action, weaving through enemy fire, engaging the cruiser with precision attacks. Elias watched tensely as the skirmish unfolded, ships spinning and dodging, weapons firing in brilliant arcs of light. Mira's system flared again, sending a pulse that disrupted the cruiser's targeting sensors. The enemy fired wildly, missing key shots. Human fighters seized the advantage, striking the cruiser's engines and weapons. Finally, with a tremendous explosion, the cruiser was destroyed. Relief swept over Elias, but it was tempered by exhaustion. The fleet had survived, but barely. Casualties were significant. Human ingenuity and courage had saved them, but the battle was far from over. Elias leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. Mira's whisper returned to him, colder than any enemy weapon. "Forgive me for what I must do after." He did not understand it, could not even guess, but he trusted her. Somehow he knew she had a reason, and it would reveal itself in time. For now he focused on the fleet, on survival, on the humans, counting on them to endure and triumph. "Commander Kane," Roran said softly, "we have stabilized our position. Enemy forces are retreating, at least for now. Mira's system is still active. It may have saved countless lives today." Elias nodded, taking a deep breath. "Then let's prepare for the next wave. Humanity does not rest. We do not yield. We adapt. We survive. And we fight on." In the observation deck, the stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the battle. Elias allowed himself a single thought of Mira, imagining her working tirelessly, her secret plan in motion. The kiss, the whisper, and the warning burned in his mind, yet he found strength in them. The first battle had been won, but the war was just beginning, and humanity, clever, brave, and unyielding, would face the darkness together, guided by courage, ingenuity, and the unwavering spirit that made them uniquely human. The battle had ended, but the air on the human fleet's repair station was heavy with silence. Ships glimmered in the docking bays, engines humming softly as mechanics and engineers rushed to patch the damage. Smoke from minor explosions still lingered in the corridors, and the scent of ozone filled the air. Commander Elias Kane walked slowly through the central deck of the Aurora, his eyes scanning the repaired hulls and weary crews. Victory had come at a cost. Human ingenuity and courage had saved the fleet from destruction, but hundreds of ships were damaged and many lives had been lost. Still, there was a strange sense of relief, a fragile pride in the survivors who had seen death and chosen to fight on. Elias's thoughts, however, were elsewhere. Mira Solon had been distant throughout the battle, her system saving countless lives, yet she had remained secretive. Her whispered words before the fight haunted him. "Forgive me for what I must do after." He had watched her work in silence, following protocols and activating subsystems that no one else could understand. But now, away from the heat of combat, the truth pressed on him. He found Mira in the command center, sitting alone at a console, her face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. She did not look up as he entered, her eyes scanning data streams, analyzing every detail of the battle they had just fought. "Mira," Elias said softly, approaching her, "we survived." "The fleet, we're alive," she paused, finally looking at him. Her eyes were calm, yet there was a shadow of guilt hidden beneath the surface. "Yes," she said quietly, "we survived. But at a price, and not all of it is visible yet." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" "You saved lives. You saved the fleet. What else is there?" Mira's hands trembled slightly as she activated a holographic map. Green dots indicated human ships, while red represented the remaining alien forces scattered across the sector. "During the battle, I had to make a choice," she said, her voice low. I activated a system that gave us an advantage. It disrupted the alien targeting and guidance networks, but it required me to transmit data back to certain alien nodes. Elias stiffened. You did what? I had no choice, Mira said firmly. The system works by sending signals to their network to create interference. Without it, our fleet would have been decimated, but the same signals also shared fragments of our fleet positions and strategies with the aliens. I couldn't prevent that. I did what I had to do to save the most lives. Elias's mind raced. So you gave them information about us? Yes, Mira admitted. Her gaze dropped to her hands. Some of it. Only the minimal required to keep the system operational. And it may have saved thousands of human lives. But I fear it may have also created risk for the next phase of the war. That's what I meant in my whisper. Elias's chest tightened. You risked betrayal. To save lives, that is, harder to forgive than any weapon they fired at us. Mira's eyes met his, and in that gaze he saw both determination and sorrow. I would do it again. Every time. Humanity's survival is worth impossible choices. I do not regret the lives we saved, but I regret the shadows I leave behind. Elias paced, running his fingers through his hair. He struggled to balance his admiration for her courage with the sting of her secret. You put the fleet at risk, for what you thought was the greater good. How am I supposed to trust that again? You trust your instincts, Elias, Mira replied softly. And your instincts tell you I am human like you. We both fight for the same purpose. Humanity survives. I may operate in shadows, but my goals align with ours. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Mira's logic was sound, but the emotional weight pressed on him. Still, he could not deny that her system had saved them. The battle would have been far worse without her intervention. Show me the data, he said finally. Let me see exactly what you did. Mira nodded, projecting the complex diagrams, energy pulses, and network flows across the holographic display. Elias watched carefully as the flow of signals, their interference patterns, and the strategic targeting adjustments revealed themselves. It was brilliant, intricate, and undeniably effective. The system had saved countless lives. You really did all of this in secret? Elias asked, amazement mixed with concern. Yes, Mira said. I couldn't risk revealing it. If anyone knew the details, they might have questioned or delayed activation. Seconds matter in battle. Lives depend on action, not debate. Elias shook his head, finally allowing a small smile. Your brilliance. It's infuriating. You are impossible, Mira. And yet necessary, she replied with a faint smile. The tension between them eased slightly, though the shadow of her earlier warning remained. Elias realized that her whispered apology was not just about the act itself, but about the moral weight she carried, the difficult choices that came with protecting humanity. Have you considered what this means for the fleet? Elias asked. If the aliens figure out what you did, how will they react? They may retaliate, Mira admitted. Or they may be confused. The system was designed to obscure their understanding, to make them hesitate. That hesitation is our advantage. But the next phase of this war, it will test humanity in ways we cannot yet predict. Elias sat heavily in a chair, running a hand over his face. You are a genius, Mira. And maybe the hardest person I've ever had to trust. You saved lives today, but your secret, it could cost us tomorrow. She leaned back, her gaze unwavering. The cost of survival is never easy to bear. But it is the cost we must accept if we are to endure. You taught me that, Elias. Humanity endures because we make impossible choices, because we act when others hesitate, and because we believe in something greater than ourselves. Her words resonated deeply. Elias realized that this was the essence of what he had always admired in humanity. The courage to act in the face of fear. The willingness to bear the weight of decisions that others could not. Mira embodied that spirit in all its brilliance and burden. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The hum of the ship, the faint vibrations of repairs, and the distant chatter of crews filled the room. Elias's thoughts drifted to the battlefield, to the ships that had been destroyed, and to the lives Mira had saved. He understood now why she had whispered those words before the fight. It was not just a warning. It was a plea for understanding, a request for trust in the midst of impossible choices. Finally, Elias spoke, his voice calm but resolute. I may never fully understand all you do, Mira, but I trust you. Today you saved humanity, and that is enough to hold on to for now. Mira's expression softened, relief mingling with exhaustion. Thank you, Elias, that trust. It is worth more than any victory, any system, any plan. It is what keeps me going. The hours passed and the fleet continued its repairs. Pilots rested, engineers worked tirelessly, and the wounded received care. Elias and Mira moved through the ship, checking on crews, offering encouragement and quietly ensuring that every life mattered. During a brief pause, Elias found himself once more at the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly, silent and cold, yet full of distant hope. Mira joined him, standing beside him in quiet companionship. They did not speak immediately. Words were unnecessary. The shared understanding of duty, sacrifice, and humanity's resilience was enough. Finally, Mira spoke softly. Do you ever wonder, Elias, if humanity is ready for the challenges ahead? He looked at her, then back at the stars. We will never be fully ready, but we are human. We adapt, we survive, and we fight. That is what makes us strong. That is what makes us unstoppable. Mira nodded, a faint smile crossing her lips. Then we have hope. And as long as there is hope, humanity endures. For the first time since the battle, Elias allowed himself to feel a sense of calm. The revelation of Mira's secret had shaken him, but it had also strengthened his respect for her and for the spirit of humanity. They were not perfect, and the choices they faced were never easy, but their courage and ingenuity would carry them forward. And somewhere deep within, Elias knew that Mira's whispered warning was not a harbinger of betrayal, but a reminder of the weight they both carried, the weight of protecting humanity at all costs, and the courage to make impossible choices for a future they could not yet see. The stars glimmered silently, witnesses to a humanity that had survived, adapted, and triumphed, not just through technology or strength, but through courage, sacrifice, and the enduring spirit that defined them. Elias took a deep breath and turned to Mira. The battle is over for now, but the war is just beginning. She placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and reassuring. Then we face it together, like we always have. And together they looked out at the endless stars, knowing that humanity's strength was not in the ships, the weapons, or even the plans. They were in the people who fought, sacrificed, and refused to surrender no matter the odds. The fleet moved slowly through the neutral space station, repairs continuing on every docked ship. Smoke had cleared, alarms were silenced, and the distant hum of engines was a steady reminder that life, fragile and precious, persisted. Commander Elias Kane walked through the corridors of the Aurora, his boots echoing on the metallic floors, and watched as crews repaired, cleaned, and tended to the wounded. Victory in the first battle had been hard-earned. Human ships had survived where they might have been destroyed. Countless lives had been saved, but Elias knew the war was far from over. Humanity's enemies were cunning, adaptive, and relentless. Yet despite the fear and exhaustion, hope lingered. He found Mira Solon in the strategy room reviewing reports from the fleet. Her face, though tired, carried the quiet satisfaction of someone who had done what needed to be done. Elias approached, mindful of the distance that still lingered between them after the revelation of her secret. You've done it again, he said softly, saved countless lives, and still you carry the weight of every choice. Mira looked up and offered a faint smile. It is not easy, she admitted. The consequences of survival are never easy. But if humanity lives, then every decision, every sacrifice, every risk, it is worth it. Elias nodded, standing beside her. You made choices that others could never understand. And yet you proved that humans are more than their ships or weapons. Our strength, it comes from courage, from intelligence, from refusing to surrender even when the odds are impossible. Mira's eyes softened. Humanity endures because of people like you, Elias. Leaders who believe in hope and action and in the spirit of everyone fighting alongside them. I only amplify that. I only give them a chance to survive. The room was quiet, but the hum of the ship and the distant sounds of repairs filled the silence. Elias realized that Mira's secret, her whispered warning, and her actions were part of a pattern that defined humanity itself. Humans faced impossible choices every day, and sometimes the right path was hidden in shadows. Later, Elias moved to the observation deck, where he could see the fleet stretching across the void. Stars shone like distant beacons of hope, and among them human ships glimmered, repaired and ready. The Aurora was not alone. Hundreds of ships moved with purpose, a living demonstration of human ingenuity and determination. He was not alone on the deck. Mira joined him quietly, standing beside him in companionable silence. They did not need words yet. Their shared understanding of survival, sacrifice, and resilience was enough. Finally, Mira spoke softly. "Do you ever wonder what will become of us, Elias? After the battles, after the war, will humanity still endure?" Elias gazed at the stars, thinking of the countless humans who had built colonies, raised families, and dared to explore the galaxy. "Humanity will endure," he said firmly. "We adapt, we survive, we fight, and we learn from every battle, every choice. That is what makes us strong. That is what makes us unstoppable." Mira smiled faintly, a glimmer of relief in her eyes. "Then there is hope." "Yes," Elias said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "As long as there is hope, humanity will survive, and we will make sure that the sacrifices we make are not in vain." Over the next days, the fleet prepared for its next mission. Crews trained, ships were upgraded, and strategies were refined. Despite exhaustion, morale remained high. The first battle had proven that humans could overcome impossible odds, and that knowledge gave them strength. Elias spent time with his officers, discussing tactics, refining plans, and ensuring that everyone understood the value of their actions. Mira continued her work, analyzing alien technology, developing new systems, and guiding the fleet's strategy. Though her earlier secret had caused tension, her brilliance had also saved lives, and trust in her had begun to rebuild. One evening, Elias returned to the observation deck to watch the fleet. Mira joined him once more, leaning lightly on the railing. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and among their brilliance, human ships glimmered like beacons of perseverance. "You know," Elias said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking about your whisper. Before the battle. Forgive me for what I must do after. I understand now. It wasn't a warning of betrayal. It was a warning of responsibility, of the weight you carry to protect humanity." Mira nodded, her expression reflective. "Yes, every action has consequences, some visible, some hidden. But if we are to survive, if we are to endure, we must act, even when the cost is heavy." "And yet," Elias said, a small smile forming, "you do it without hesitation. You are human, and yet, more than human. Your courage inspires everyone." Mira looked at him, her eyes shining with quiet emotion. "We all inspire each other, Elias. Humanity is more than one person, one ship, or one plan. It is everyone who refuses to give up, everyone who fights despite fear, everyone who believes that tomorrow is worth living for. That is our strength." Elias took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. Humanity's strength was not in technology, nor in numbers, but in the hearts and minds of those willing to fight, sacrifice, and endure. Mira had reminded him of that, not just through her brilliance, but through her willingness to bear the weight of impossible choices. The next morning, the fleet assembled for the next phase of their campaign. Ships lined up in formation, engines glowing, weapons primed. Elias and Mira stood together on the bridge of the Aurora, watching their people move with purpose. "Remember," Elias said to the officers over the comm, "humanity survives not because we are perfect, but because we never stop trying. We adapt, we learn, and we fight. Every life matters. Every decision counts. And together, we will endure." The fleet responded with determination, a chorus of engines, voices, and purpose. It was a living testament to the resilience and ingenuity of humanity. As the fleet jumped into the next sector, Elias glanced at Mira. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we face it together." "Together," she echoed. Stars stretched endlessly ahead, vast and silent, yet full of promise. Humanity had survived, adapted, and triumphed once again, not through machines, weapons, or strategy alone, but through the courage, ingenuity, and unwavering spirit of those who dared to fight. And as the fleet moved forward into the unknown, Elias and Mira knew that humanity's legacy was not written in victories or battles alone, but in the hearts of those who refused to surrender, who faced impossible choices with bravery, and who never stopped believing in a future worth fighting for. The galaxy was vast, the challenges enormous, but humanity endured. And in that endurance, in the courage and brilliance of its people, lay the true power that no alien fleet, no weapon, and no darkness could ever overcome. Elias watched the stars with Mira by his side, feeling hope like a steady flame. Humanity had survived the impossible, and they would continue to survive, adapt, and thrive. The battles ahead would be hard, but they were ready. Because humanity, clever, brave, and unyielding, was unstoppable. And so the fleet moved onward, a beacon in the void, carrying with it the spirit of all who had come before, and all who would follow. Humanity had faced its trials and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. In the silence of space, among the distant stars, the human heart beat strong, unbroken, and eternal.